We are back on Inside Politics. Our guest today is mayoral candidate John Cooper, who's also a Metro Councilman at large. Councilman, you mentioned right before we went to the break that you plan to go to the legislature first day and try to get them to change the adjustments to those particular taxes
to help us fund our
Normally,
city.
the way the legislature works, they say, well, if you're making more money on this than you need or it's not going to the right place, why don't you just cut the tax? Are you willing to cut the taxes amount in order to get more control over them?
Well,
it generates way more money than we're needing. It's sitting in a reserve right now.
You mean the sales taxes in the tourism zone? Well, there are more ways of accessing that money, and than that, there are more revenues available. But many of them do require state changes, and
the bondholders too.
And for the things that are affected by the bond covenants. So but the goal has to be, what are we doing long-term strategically for the city? Of course we need to make money off of tourism as a city. Of course the whole state of Florida has figured out to do it. In Branson, Missouri, I'm told every school child gets a computer because of their adjustment of tourism revenues. The tourism industry is one of our great strengths. It's one of our strategic advantages going forward if we are able to use it for the general taxpayer. Now that strategic redirection for the city is making it the most exciting city in the 21st century because we have this valuable asset that we have never really used for the general taxpayer. Now we have a moment where we can get a return to the general fund from tourism, and so you've built a great asset. You have to keep that great asset going, and excitingly, now we can use that for the whole county. It's a great moment for the city. It's just a great moment for the city.
I interviewed your brother. We aired it election night about you running for office. He says he loves you, he supports you, he voted for you, but he seemed very uncomfortable about you running. What's that all about?
Well, uncomfortable. Well, I mean, Jim is an incredible inspiration. We have this model of public service. We are in very different lanes. The local government and the federal space really could not be more different. I'm at a point in my life with my business career and my family. Today, my oldest child turns 20. I'm very excited about that, to get home, at a point where I can contribute and I think I can help the city with all of my background. That's business, real estate, finance, some knowledge of politics, and 4 years on the council.
Your brother said to me that you're running for office is a coincidence, not a conspiracy. Who would think
is that his line?
Yeah,
is that his line?
Who would think it's a conspiracy?
Well, I think that's one of those witty lines that maybe not standing up to time.
But isn't the concern among conservative voters that you might be as liberal as they think your brother is, and therefore they might be uncomfortable voting for you for mayor?
Well, the mayorship is administrative. It is delivering on schools, police, fire. It is spending money. It is being a financial realist and a truth teller. And in those regards, Jim is a model. And Jim has worked beautifully with 3 or 4 other mayors, and now we'll be able to work super well, I am sure. His conduct in office isn't going to be changed by whoever is mayor, of course.
So voters should not be uncomfortable that the 2 highest officials elected in Davidson County, the mayor and the congressman, are going to be brothers from the same family?
Well, now that is coincidence. But again, political families do have an ideal of public service. You're raised in it and how to do it the right way. And I think that helps me help the city.
You mentioned the managerial nature of being mayor, but there's a lot of conversation lately about ICE crackdowns here in Nashville. And the current mayor has made a video and also is providing money to help illegals be able to understand what their rights are in dealing with ICE. If you're mayor, will you continue to provide that kind of money and information about what they should do?
I'm not sure what money he is providing, but going back to your question, of course we need everybody to understand their rights. This is America. Understanding your rights is fundamental. And equally, I think Nashville is in an okay place in terms of this, which is we're going to enforce the state law, maybe not more, but we're going to enforce the state law. And really, we're going to prioritize our local police for local crime. We're not going to use our police for ICE or the IRS or the EPA or any federal agency that is doing stuff in Nashville. That's not our police department's job.
The current mayor has been out pushing again for more gun regulation after the mass murders that we continue to have across the country. What will you do about that? Will you speak out and join other mayors on that, or is that just simply a state matter in the local governments had nothing to do with it.
Well, local governments do have very little to do with that, but local governments do, unfortunately, have a huge role, frankly, in being prepared for these kind of terrible events happening. Now, this is something that every mayor has to realize could happen in their city. Are we prepared? Are we doing what we can do to deal with that? And that's going to be the first job of the mayor. And then, of course, not having any more of these horrific events is going to be a priority for everybody. But now I will say that's more of a federal and state problem right now. Cities are the creatures of the state, and if we get out of our lanes, the legislature is happy to correct us.
You mentioned you want to make neighborhoods first, a little bit more than downtown, which you think has been too much of a priority. Your opponent says you voted against $600 million worth of neighborhood projects over the last 2 years. You said you didn't have enough information, but these are projects like funding a new library for Donaldson, funding police body cameras.
Well, this is a standard kind of political tactic that people use to kind of push people into inappropriate votes. Bob Mendez and I, and he is certainly a progressive truth teller, had identical votes on all of these. Because the problem with Metro, which is being flagged by the controller's letter right now, possibly putting this city into kind of a soft receivership, is because for too long we have been really pushed into an inappropriate way of dealing with all this debt. The happy thing is spending. Of course we want to spend money, but that's more to the job than just the spending. It's how are you going to pay for it? Now we have to prove to the controller how we're going to pay for it. And then the choices in the bill itself. The bill had $35 million worth of downtown subsidies and only $60 million for all of schools. Well, why only $60 million? There was never any discussion about why only $60 million in schools. That's really a kind of a sixth of the total amount. And the effort to have a discussion was halted. The chairlady of the Budget Committee, Tanaka Vircher, herself asked for a deferral. And yet it was pushed through by the administration with really no examination. And the controller is calling us out on these practices. And if you look at what I said at the time, I predicted a year ago that to keep going down this path, you were going to have adults who are in charge of finance look at Nashville and go, you're not doing it quite the right way.
Metro Councilman at Large John Cooper is our guest. He's a candidate for mayor in the September 12th runoff. Back to continue our conversation after this break.